gentlemen, welcome back to That's So Fringy podcast. My name is Rick.
And I'm Kristen.
And we are here today talking with a friend named Paul Stobbs. We heard Paul on several different podcasts talking about clowns of all things, and it just made me curious. Where do these clowns even come from? How did we get clowns? How did these come onto the scene? And we heard Paul talking about all of the cool and crazy things that he's found in his research. So we wanted to bring him on the podcast and just introduce him to our audience. Paul, how's everything going with you?
No, it's going great. Thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be here. It's been a busy week. I've been podcasting left, right, and centre as we were just talking about. So it's good to be here again to explain it all again.
Yeah, everybody's hungry for this knowledge, right? Everybody wants to know what you're finding because the links that you're making are tremendous, and they make so much sense when you lay them out the way that you do. And so we're just going to let you do that. We're going to start from the beginning. What kind of got you into this research, and how did you find your way to where you are today?
Sure. Well, it's a long story. So if you've got time, I'll tell the story. But
got plenty of time.
Brilliant. Right. So I've been in the conspiracy game, for well over a decade. I started the channel in March of 2014. Prior to that, I had been building up to making the channel throughout university. I was studying my degree in fine art from 2011 to 2014. And the channel was actually a result of an art project, which was about analysing conspiracy theories and theorists, and just to get to the bottom of understanding just what it is these people believe. So I ended up creating the channel as like a piece of artwork to present to my teachers. I was kind of cheating the system to get away with doing what I wanted to do on YouTube, and also
Hey, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
That's what I mean. And the subject matter of conspiracy theories, I just loved it. I was engrossed into it for those 3 years I was at university. And prior to that, I was a relatively atheistic guy. I grew up not really religious, so I didn't go to church or anything. My grandma was Roman Catholic, but I only went to church there a couple of times as a kid. Nothing major. In fact, my earliest memory of being in a church with my grandma is I must have been about 6 or 8 or something like that, and the old lady in front of me, this frail old woman, fainted and hit her head on the pew as she went down.
Jeez.
And died. So it was a horrific experience for a young child in a church setting. So I was actually pretty staunch anti-God atheist.
Yeah.
My teenage years going up, my edgy years, my angsty years. But as I got into being a teenager, at the age of 16, I was very much experimental with a lot of things. Started smoking cannabis, and I'd already been smoking cigarettes for a few years prior to that. And me and my friends got this idea that, maybe we should try doing salvia, because we see all these videos online. And this is like 2009 period. I'm 31 now. I forget how long ago it was, but I was 16 anyway. And we ended up doing salvia because we were blown away by all these videos of people doing it online with howling with laughter, and we want to know what's going on. And I have this crazy intense psychedelic experience when I do it. I'm in fear because I'm basically going to another dimension, and I didn't know this at the time, but it's more powerful, if not equal to DMT, and I didn't know that. That's what I was getting myself into. I didn't DMT by that point. It's only in hindsight, as I got older and did this research in my 20s up to 30s about dimethyltryptamine, that I realized what I was doing at that age, But by that point, you start to lose your atheistic standpoint after having an experience like that. So I started to question reality and think, well, there's something going on here that I clearly don't understand. Where the hell did I go? What's going on? That reality is not as solid as I thought it was. It was one of those kind of moments, but I didn't know what to make of it. Again, I wasn't a religious person, but I did start going down that consciousness exploration through psychedelic route from then on. And then, as time went on, I was smoking weed every day. But I got to this point where I was kind of trying to get my hands on anything I could that would not like hard drugs, not like heroin and things that would be considered psychedelic in nature. Things
you feel like you were chasing that experience, trying to have it again, or were you trying to mask something else, or was it just fun?
It was more just I wanted to understand what happened. It's not like I was chasing to relive that particular experience. I wouldn't say it was pleasant, to be honest. Like it's not like but it was one of those, I need to understand just exactly what happened. Like what is this spiritual thing going on that I knew nothing about, you know? And I end up going down the New Age Gnostic route of thinking about this, the I am a god type angle, you know, the ego death angle, the learning about hermeticism and alchemical principles and all this type of thing, and very much going down that route of sacred geometry and mastering consciousness and just all the Jungian type archetypical stuff, the psychological perspective. You know, I was heavily seeped in that. I was always a lover of psychology and just how the mind works. So it all kind of fit into that. I wasn't a hippie. I was very much in more of a logistical, scientific worldview of trying to understand these experiences. When I went to university, I was already in that full swing attitude, and then suddenly everyone's talking about the end of the world in 2012 and the Mayan calendar ending, and I'm like, "What's this? Why are people saying these things? What's going on?" You know, and I basically went on to then discover the conspiracy culture online in about 2011, 2010. Because of this build up to the 2012 end of the world stuff, I kind of started making work about it and talking to people online about it. And I ended up going down every other rabbit hole and tangent you inevitably end up discovering when you start dipping your toes into conspiracy theories. You don't just stop at one, you end up rolling on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I went through the process like everybody does. Sure. I alienated a lot of friends and family along the way, the usual thing. You know, I tried to shake people awake and got a bit overzealous about it, and naturally, I pushed people away in that respect.
Yeah,
and I kind of came to a conclusion when I started the channel that so all this stuff is true. It's not just some psychological phenomena; it's real. You know, there really is a conspiracy, but people don't really know how to handle the information very well. No one believes anybody who talks about it because they look crazy when they start talking about it. So I wanted to create a channel which could present the information in a calm, cool, level-headed way in the hopes to teach others how to also share the information without coming across as a lunatic and losing them. You know? So a lot of my work was about that initially. It's like meta commentary on what it means to be a truther type of thing. But I was also going through the end of my degree at this point. And I was kind of lost. I didn't really know where I was going. I was heavily burnt out from all the drugs I had been doing. I've been doing every single psychedelic under the sun. Typical art student, you know. I was just a walking, talking stereotype in that respect. And I had no direction by the end of my degree. I had this channel, and I didn't know where I was going to go or what I was going to do in my life. I had nothing. I didn't know. I didn't have a clue. And all my receptors were burnt out, and I was just in like very low, depressed state. So, as you do when you research conspiracy, you inevitably always keep bumping into the Jesus question and the Christian and the Christian answers to all these questions you end up gathering. And I kind of always kept avoiding it. I didn't want to know about that. I was happy going down the Gnostic route and thinking, this knowledge has all the answers. I can learn enough stuff and I can save myself and make myself more like an enlightened being or a god or whatever the hell I thought at the time. It's hard. In retrospect, it's hard to even think about the gibberish I was going on about. But I did eventually, because I'd heard plenty of preachers and people telling me the perspective, but I just didn't want to take it on board. I just thought it was just another angle you could view it all from. But I asked God to help me in that low moment, and he did. And my life changed from that day forth, and I believe I was born again in that time. And the decade since then, my life has turned around, and I'm a completely different person. I'm sober. I don't touch those things, and I don't smoke cannabis. I don't smoke. I don't drink or anything. My desires changed that day, and that's when my research really went into high gear. That's when I finally accepted the biblical perspective. That's when answers were truly starting to come my way, and I started to actually go down looking into biblical history. Now, because I wasn't raised in a church, I don't sound like a Christian. I don't speak Christianese, as I call it. I don't carry myself in a way like a typical... And I don't really have much dogma or dogmatic, overzealous attitudes or beliefs about specific concepts in the Bible. I just read the Bible, and I take it as it is. And I'm also open to reading these extra biblical texts and what people say aren't canon. well, they have a lot of answers in these books I'm not willing to just ignore. So things like Enoch, for example, Jubilees, Jasher, all these books. And I was making a holistic picture of biblical history while researching these things. People like Gary Wayne, for example, or even Rob Skeever when he was still knocking about, they gave me these understandings about the Nephilim and demons. Now, demons were a big topic for me because I'd had so many spiritual experiences, not only through psychedelics, but when I was coming off the drugs, I got heavily spiritually attacked, demonically attacked, I would say. And that's when I was really being given these clues that we are in the middle of a serious spiritual war against wicked forces in this spirit realm. Like, this isn't even a joke, Yeah. I felt like I almost died twice because of this. And my very essence was leaving my body many times, and calling on Jesus saved me. So it's kind of, okay, so there's weapons and there's a war here.
Yeah, a certain amount of power in this name, obviously.
Exactly. So all of this was clearly, being self-evident to me through my experiences, but I've always been in this state of mind where I'm not going to be able to convince anybody else of my own experiences, but I know it's true. I know it's real. Yeah. This is actually happening. So, a lot of this research I did into biblical history, trying to explain, okay, so what are these creatures then? What are they? Why are they there? I never bought the Jungian psychedelic answer that these beings people see on dimethyltryptamine are just collective consciousness symbols of the archetypes of humanity or something, trying to teach us something symbolic about our own inner workings or whatever nonsense they want to describe it. They seem like real tangible entities to me with personalities and agendas, and the Bible explains them clearly, especially in the book of Enoch. These are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim that were once on the earth, ruling as giant, tyrannical, cannibalistic monsters, basically. The children and offspring of fallen angels mixing with human women. And as soon as I understood that concept, things did start to just click into place. And the whole Bible made sense all of a sudden as to why God ordained the killing of many people in the lands of Canaan, for example, the men, women, and children, and even the animals. All these other stumbling blocks I found for a lot of Christians, even myself as an atheist. These are huge stumbling blocks which would stop me from wanting to go down that route. But these open up the door for people like me who are atheists to go, it makes sense now. I get it now. This God isn't a maniac. He actually, of course, why wouldn't he stop this? It's a mercy. He helped us. It was, and clearly, Gary Wayne would even say this: there is a conspiracy to suppress this knowledge, even in the churches, because it gives too much away. And I think this information just clicked into place for me. And then because I'm an artist, I've always had this idea of, I like to get visual about things. And I always had this question in my mind, well, what would a human mammal woman being mixing with a fiery flying seraphim angel serpent monster look like? What would that look like? Because all I ever saw was these images of really hench looking men to represent the Nephilim everywhere. Just like normal looking, really tanned, long brown hair, big brown beard men, just with huge pecs and massive abs, wearing a loincloth. and it's like a tiny man next to that image of that. Like, that's what the Nephilim look like. It's like, I don't think they would have looked like that. I think actually, if you consider what the angels are described as looking like, in Ezekiel especially, with the living creatures and the throne, you always see these depictions of biblically accurate angels on the internet with many eyes everywhere on these wings. The seraphim angels are named after the fiery burn of a serpent's bite, the fiery flying serpents, the seraphim. These are psychedelic, monstrous, animalistic hybrid creatures that the angels have these forms of. Now, I believe angels can take human form, but they're not like us. Okay, there's something else. So if that was mixed with a human being, the outcome wouldn't look human. It might have like a similar human silhouette, perhaps. 2 arms, 2 legs, as far as it goes, as human goes. But the features would have been something else. So I always knew that. I always knew there was an issue with the model we had. There's something wrong with it. It's too basic.
It's kind of like white Jesus.
Yeah, that's what. As time went on, anyway, the things started to happen to me. I started to have these weird visions around 2014, 15. I saw the jesters everybody on DMT sees. But by this point, I hadn't done DMT in like 4 years. So I thought I had like a weird flashback where your mind takes you back to that realm without any cause or reason. Apparently it's a real phenomenon. But when I went, I was confronted with this giant entity, which was a black and white fractal patterned jester-looking thing with a huge, big, wide purple-lipped grin and massive glowing eyes. And it had its weird jester-shaped hat on, but I realised that's not a hat. Its skull is shaped like that. It's actually its physical features, you know. And it wasn't wearing like a jester jumpsuit or a leotard or anything. Its skin was that pattern, like it was.
Yes.
And I think that was, in hindsight now, years after the fact, a vision of some kind. I think I was shown, all right, you want to know, like Paul? Fine, you asked me to help you. So God just said, here they are, then took me back. That's what it felt like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is what the Nephilim looked like, and then he brought me back, basically. So I knew then, okay, so the Nephilim look like giant jester entities. The jesters that people see on the other side of DMT that they always talk about, these are the Nephilim creatures. So I already had that idea. And it's a bit overwhelming in the moment, so I kind of buried it for a little bit. I didn't talk about it. I didn't think... it was there, rattling around in my head, but it's kind of... I didn't know what to make of it at the time. I didn't know I was going to go on to make a series talking about Nephilim and clowns, for example, then. You know, it was just something that randomly happened to me. And I kind of had these other attacks, dreams, visions. At one moment, the entire room started to collapse in around me, and darkness seeped in my vision. And before my vision disappeared, I went numb, I collapsed, I was paralyzed, and I had to just say my last prayer, Jesus, help me. Then suddenly I'm back in the room, everything's back to normal again. So I do think there was this period of time where demons were coming after me because I quit all the things that they used to enjoy me doing. I think I used to be a useful tool for them once, but now I wasn't. Yeah. They were trying to
stopped interacting with them, so they were like, hey, I lost a friend, come back.
I think it's the idea, let's just kill him now, we have no use for him before it's too late. But I was wise enough then to realize I could use the name of Jesus to save myself from that situation, and it worked, you know. So the fools, jokes on them, it only solidified my faith, their attacks. So it's kind of
right.
But again, all these experiences, I had another dream as well in about 2015 where this Hatman entity came after me in a dream, and he looked like a Morris dancer. He had this wide-brimmed purple hat with a purple trench coat and a cane. He had glowing orange eyes, like yellowish eyes, and his face was like a shadow entity type hidden thing. But he had these multicolored ribbons just flying off of his back and this glowing aura about him as he was coming after me in a dream. And it was terrifying. It looked like he was coming to kill me, you know, and I ran in the dream. He caught up to me, and I had to wrench myself awake, screaming and kicking, because I thought, I'm about to die. This is it. This is where I die, you know. But luckily I got out of that situation. But even that imagery of a Hatman entity who's covered in psychedelic ribbons, what is that? You know, that is so strange. Only years after the fact, for my research, that I realized that's the basic costume of most shamans in every tradition or on every continent. Multicolored ribbons and a wide rimmed hat. But I didn't know that then. Do you get what I mean? So it's like I was being shown these hints of things to come in the future for my own research. And being a conspiracy theorist, by this point, my channel was in full swing. I'd already been exposing the occult symbolism, things like that, you know, getting into secret societies and their use of symbolism and their control in the world. So I was well aware that, you know, the media is heavily controlled. And comes around 2016, suddenly there's clowns everywhere all over the TV. Creepy clown sightings. Everyone's terrified of these clowns looking menacing on street corners for some reason. And, you know, I was more surprised that the media was making such a big deal out of it. Why are they pointing the cameras at these clowns? And why is it happening all over the Anglosphere, in the UK and Europe and America and Canada? It's everywhere, you know. They're showing clowns everywhere, and the camera's being pointed on them. And I know the media does nothing by accident. If they're showing you something, if they're showing you something, they want you to see. There's a meaning. There's a symbol. It might not mean anything to us, but to those who are initiated into these secret societies, these industries, that means something to them. It's a message for them. So that got me thinking about the clown, DMT, jesters, demons, the Nephilim. It all started to click in my mind, and I just went off on one from there, basically. And I did a preliminary search and found that no one's really talked about clowns and Nephilim before, but somebody had made a mock video pretending to be a conspiracy theorist, making a joke at our expense. and basically described the Nephilim as having white skin and red hair and a big wide mouth. And, you know, these are interdimensional killer clowns from outer space. That's kind of his joke, mocking the concept of them. And as soon as he said the joke, I heard reality. I went, wait a minute, you're onto something there and you don't even know it. So I kind of just kept rolling with the idea, and I got a good 14 episodes into a series, but at the end of 2017, I started it in 2016, just after the clown sightings, but I got about 14 episodes into the series and I had to stop making videos because my workplace at the time, I was a manager at Aldi. They found my channel and then put me into a room at the back and said, you cannot be a manager and have this YouTube channel.
Oh, no.
Wow.
And, you know, in a moment of weakness, it wasn't my proudest moment, but I was too scared to lose the position I'd just gained as a manager and the money, my debts to pay from university. So I gave in. I shut the channel down for 5 years. I was silent on the matter for 5 years, you know. And no one ever really spoke about it. But then in 2021, was it 2021, a channel called Conspiracy R Us picked up the subject and made his own work and said, this guy years ago made this work and this is what he said. And it just kicked off. Everyone started going crazy about the clowns again. And he kind of inspired me to, all right, I'll release the videos again and make them not hidden anymore. Because I think the heat's died off a little bit. You know what I mean? It's been a few years. It's been a few years. I think I can get away with really, you know, the managers have come and gone now. New area managers have left.
Right.
So it's a different environment now. Maybe I can just make these videos available so people can watch the original series again. And I'll just keep doing my thing. But then as the years went on, the workplace became an extremely hostile, horrible place for me. Internal politics, narcissistic managers, attacks, being pushed down, just being treated like filth, especially during the whole lockdown situation. That was just a time, you know. I lost my granddad during that time, but then it was just a bad, horrible time, and work just got worse and worse and worse, and it culminated in me being attacked at work by a customer who I didn't serve alcohol to. I got grabbed around the throat and all this sort of horror stuff. Wow. And I realized that this came a year after being accused of theft by another manager at a different store because she didn't like me, because she wanted somebody else to be promoted over me. And I proved it all wrong through evidence. That's just nonsense. That didn't happen, you know. Nothing became of it. She didn't get punished or anything like that. And I was just sick of it by the time this person grabbed me around the throat. I just said to myself, what am I doing? I am not a manager of a supermarket. I am a conspiracy theorist. So I just quit. Yeah. And I started the channel up again. So at the start of 2003, I just picked up the series where I left it off at 17 episodes, and it's just blown up. People love it. And I've just, this is my baby. This is what I do now. I'm basically 42 episodes in, halfway through writing the book on the subject. The connections just keep coming. It's just a topic I've been given. From me. That's what it feels like. It's like, all right, Paul, you know, you want to help me in my kingdom, then show people this. You know, that's basically what it feels like has happened. So my work, you know, is basically a showcase. To summarize it very quickly, it's an anthropological study of folk traditions all over the earth that depict their ancestor spirits, who are the Nephilim. And they all use the same aesthetical traits in similar ways to depict their ancestor spirits, which have features we would consider something akin to a clown in the Western world. The image we have created in the Western Hemisphere of a clown is based off of these folk traditional representations of Nephilim spirits. It's just hidden and occulted in the West and used as a tool to channel the ancestor spirits or the Nephilim or the demons publicly without the public being aware of it. So even though it's obvious in all these other traditions of what they're doing, they don't hide it. We dress like this to channel spirits. We do it in the West in a hidden, occulted manner. So the public don't know that that's the purpose of the costume. But those who are in the know, the initiated, the Freemasons who adopted it into their circus performances that they own and use it in media, and the musicians who also dress in a similar way to channel the same spirits for their own purposes, they know what it is. A caricature of the Nephilim used for the same purposes these cultures use around the earth to channel the spirits. That's basically it.
That's wild. And you know, you always think, where do these clowns come from? Why are they all throughout time? Why do we invite them to our kids' birthday parties? Like, why do they have the thing around their neck? Why do they have usually the hair the way that they do, or the mouth the way, like, nobody really asks these questions. And I think that's the problem with our society as a whole, is we've gotten to the place now where we're not allowed to ask questions about things that are weird or strange or maybe don't add up. We get pushed away. Like, no, you don't have to look into that, because this is what we're going to find. And this is why we conspiracy theorists are hammering this stuff so hard. It's not because we're crazy. It's because we've realized that they're crazy and that they're trying to do all kinds of crazy stuff behind your back all the time. So what is it with all of the, you know, the white skin and the facial features and everything like that? What is it that causes them to do those things? Like, what is there symbology in it? Is there some sort of is that what they actually present when you see them? I know you made some mention to that before.
First of all, you cut out a couple of times there, and your screen froze. I just give you a heads up. You look quite blurry on my screen, but it says my connection's okay on my end, so I'm not worried. Maybe you guys might want to look into that. I'm just going to let you know first of all. But yeah, I got the gist of it there. So you want to know why the white skin, why the red hair, what do these features actually represent? So if you look at all the cultures around the world I've explained, who channel ancestor spirits, they all have the same aesthetical features that they use. And the base is they white the skin up as chalk, paper white as they possibly can. Something like this, you know, as white as you possibly can get it. They often add polka dots, a red nose, a wide red mouth or red lipstick of some kind. They make the brow ridge as prominent as black as possible, and they put on some kind of red fiery headdress of feathers or red reeds of some kind, or a golden ordained jeweled one of some kind as well. They often wear clothing which is either multicolored ribbons of some kind, or they paint the skin in psychedelic colored patterns of some way, and they do that to the face as well. And what they're trying to do is represent something very specific from their cultural shared history, which they consider their ancestors, the builders of their civilizations, the Nephilim. So as I explained at the start, the Nephilim are the product of fallen angels mixing with human women. Now what you would get is a serpentine hybrid human mammal thing of some kind, and that would look extremely psychedelic and trippy in nature. So as I explained, what these people are creating is a hybrid reptile, avian, feathered serpent, human style mix of creature. It's kind of like an echo through the oral tradition. They remember this thing. It was around at some point. They venerated it and or feared it. It's one of the two. So they dress like it, either to scare the spirit away or to attract it to them. It depends on whether the culture still is scared of it or loves it. It varies. But the aesthetical similarities are there. So let's break down a clown, shall we? A Western version of a clown. Anywhere you go, Nephilim are always described as having incredibly pale white skin for some reason, and red hair. It just seems to be the most basic description of any Nephilim. There's always going to be variations. Don't get me wrong. Not every lizard looks the same. Not every species of lizard or snake looks identical. There are massive variations in all animal kingdoms. But as a generic, caricatured base, white skin and red hair is the Nephilim description you'll find. Even in most modern encounters that people have had in, let's say, the Americas, the tribes of America, they always discuss these monstrous cannibalistic giant tribes terrorizing them, and they always describe them as having really pale white skin and red hair. There's even some tribes that still have the red pelts that they scalped from the giants they killed, and they kept the hair because it's so unique, bright, and fiery and red. And they're often passed down through families of these tribes who did hunt down a lot of these giants, you know. And the giant of Kandahar is a really famous modern one people always talk about, where they explain, you know, this in Afghanistan, this red-haired, white-skinned giant came out of a cave with a spear, and this team had to shoot it in the face for like 10 minutes straight just to get the thing down. So there's plenty of like mythos and stories in the modern sense. But generally speaking, most cultures represent, even in their sculptures and their artworks, these reptilian hybrid monsters as being very pale creatures. So that's a clown, first of all. That's the base of a clown. White skin, red hair. And that's from there, you're just building up more and more symbols to relate to reptilian features. So basic understanding is white skin, red hair. Anywhere you go on the earth, a very common descriptor, but there's always variation, is the point I was trying to make.
Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it anywhere and everywhere. You can even earn money all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works.
Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today.
Then you can go ahead and distribute your podcast to Spotify and anywhere else podcasts are heard.
Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take the conversation with your fans to the next level, Q&A polls are the best way to get them talking.
With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions.
And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. We've been using Spotify for Podcasters, and we highly recommend you give it a try. Download Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters and get started.
Not all of them. Some of them had blue skin, some of them had green skin, some of them had reptiles come in many colors, shapes. Nature has a beautiful color palette. It's very psychedelic in nature. And that's what we'll see in these folk traditions. They lean psychedelic in their costumes, as colorful and as bright as possible, because they're trying to channel these reptilian hybrid creatures. In terms of a Western clown, that is the base of a clown: white skin, red hair. And then what we find is we put red lipstick on or paint an enormous, exaggerated, wide grin or mouth onto the common clown. That is a reptilian feature. Reptiles have big, wide mouths. They can dislocate their jaws to eat their prey and digest their prey. And that would have been a feature probably passed down to the Nephilim as well. It says they have double rows of teeth. A lot of people describe that as, one set behind the other. But I think it meant two sets next to each other to make that wide grin happen. I think that's probably more what they were realistically talking.
Okay.
But they could have also had the two rows on top of that as well. For all we know, these things were hybrid, weird creatures that shouldn't exist. They had 6 fingers, so it seems like there's always this iteration of more things than they should have, like an over-exaggeration of human features. So who knows on that? But the big wide grin that a clown has is a serpent feature, just translated into a caricatured, funny, big wide smile. The red around the mouth, it could be reference to blood drinking. These were drinkers of blood. They're always described as drinking human blood all the time, especially in all the extra biblical texts. It gets really graphic. In fact, how bad it was. But they were cannibalistic in nature. Not only did they eat each other, but they ate us. We were their food. We were their prey. We were hunted by them. So collectively, that's probably left a horrible mark on our psyche, which is maybe explaining agoraphobia and why we have this fear of clowns today. It's when you think that maybe they were once predators that hunted us, just like snakes were predators that hunted us. And that's why people have a fear of snakes. I think it's all rooted in the same thing. People say it's the uncanny valley thing going on, which could have something to do with it. Don't get me wrong, but I'm theorizing it may run deeper in our DNA than we actually first thought. Big wide grin, clowns, reptilian feature, white skin, big red hair, clown, reptilian feature, Nephilim feature again. Often you find clowns have an elongated forehead, or they wear a skull cap that makes them like the head is taller than it is, and they often paint big black brow ridges, don't they, just to emphasize the tallness of the forehead. That's because a lot of these skulls that are found all around the earth show elongated skulls, which are the skulls of the later iterations of the Nephilim. So the 12-foot tall ones, the 10-foot tall ones, they seem to have this weird long head thing going on. I don't know if the ancient ones did, the pre-flood ones, but definitely the ones that were uncovered in a lot of these serpent mounds found in the Americas, they seem to have these elongated heads. So it's just a Nephilim trait, and that's what the elongated head of a clown is comedically trying to mimic and copy. The hybrid is an interesting one because often they paint it in blue. And if the painted like a clown would close their eyes, it gives the illusion they have giant blue glowing eyes. So that's an interesting point. We're also said to have big glowing eyes, very bulgy, large bug-like eyes, a lot like a snake. Snakes have big round eyes as well. The pupil is likely a slit, sometimes round it's depicted, but some of them may have had slit pupils, and clowns often like to draw big lines going straight down the eyes. So I think that's another reptilian feature. over-exaggerated into the makeup of a modern-day clown. It's just a caricature. It's a symbol. You know, they're just translating it into something over the top and silly, but its roots are in mimicking images of the Nephilim. So that's pretty much the face covered. The red nose is a big one, actually. This is something I only recently, in the past year, kind of got a solid theory about, because there are depictions of certain demons around the earth. In Japan, for example, Tengu is a demon who has a big red nose. It just sticks out like Pinocchio, and he has red skin and a big bulging red nose. But so there is precedent to say some creatures, demons, may have had very long protruding noses. But why? The question is why? Yes. Why do we wear a red nose for a clown? Now the story goes that one day a clown fell down the stage and broke his nose, and it was funny, and everyone laughed. So they stuck with that from then on. It's not really enough for me, considering my theory. I initially thought maybe it's because they're drinking blood and eating people. They would have got blood on the nose. But even that was always too basic in my mind. I felt like that's not enough to justify the big foam round nose that they put on people.
Sure.
It's not simply just colouring your nose in red. It's making it look round. So why? Why are they doing this? You know, I did find the odd depiction here and there. There's paintings of the Wangina in the Kimberley region of Australia, for example, who look just like clowns, literally through and through, like an exact carbon copy of what we call a clown with a big red afro. Some of them have a red nose, which is quite interesting. In South America, in the North Americas, some of them, these giant tribes, were described as the noseless ones. So that could imply they had a big gaping hole instead of a nose, which is
interesting.
Like a big red circle. So that's another working theory. But what I found, which I think actually has a lot of scientific basis for it, is the nature of these creatures having incredibly pale skin like this. Paper white. You know, so not like me. Like some white boy from the north of England, you know, who lives in the grey land. It rains all the time. I'm talking like porcelain, vampiric, leprous, not human white. This is something else white. This is clown makeup white. You know, this is something. Get away from race. It's not about white people or Nephilim.
Right.
This is something else. Okay, and even then, if you want to go off the book of Lamech of Cain, it says the curse of the white leprous skin was actually the mark of Cain. That's what people have said, you know, and that would fit in with my theory. But there's a lot to be said about that text being heretical in many ways, you know.
Sure.
But if it's a passing thing in the book to describe the mark of Cain as being just white skin, it's not the focus of the book. The focus of the book is actually more about trying to find out who did Cain mate with. You know, that's what the focus of the book is really about. But it says in there that this white skin thing disappears after 6 generations. That's enough generations to the generation of Jared for the angels to mix with human women and create Nephilim. But after that, Mark disappears. So the white leprous skin of the humans disappears. So this means the OG Nephilim, who did first appear in the world during the times of Jared, would have been around just in time to mix with women who still have this porcelain white skin mark. So that might explain where they get the white skin from and why these Nephilim are often depicted with pale white skin. It could be just one theory, but a side effect of being white, like myself, it's predominantly a Northern European problem, is something called the curse of the Celts. It's a sickness. It's a real genetic illness that is specifically, just like a lot of black people get sickle cell anemia. It's a racial issue. Same for white people. This curse of the Celts is an issue with dealing with iron in the blood. And it's also extreme rosacea can be a side effect of this, where they get red blotches appearing on porcelain white skin.
Yes.
That could be a polka dot reference, first of all, because the paler you are, the more if you're susceptible to getting this, if you're pale, then these are the palest creatures, the Nephilim. So it's likely they would have had this issue, this genetic issue of extreme rosacea, where the blood pools onto the front of the skin and creates blotches. So that could be why a lot of clowns have polka dot patterns and skins in their clothing, but also in extreme cases of the curse of the Celts, when this gets out of hand and really goes, and especially in a lot older people, the older they get with this genetic issue, the nose starts to grow in a big bulbous red ball. It's called a rhinophyma. And the old stereotypical adage is drunks end up getting this. People who drink too much get this nose. Nothing to do with that. It's a genetic condition. You can drink as much as you want. It will not be the cause of it. It doesn't matter. It's a genetic thing.
Mm.
And the only way to get rid of it, you have to literally shave it off with a hot wire and resculpt the nose back into something that's shaped like a human. But if you let it just grow, you end up with a big red nose, like a ball. That's what you end up having. And if that's a specifically white skin issue, and they had the whiter skin, it's likely the older the Nephilim got, the bigger and the redder the noses began to form. So it's very likely they did develop big red noses. So there's a working theory I have to explain the red nose of a clown and Nephilim. So how it's usually a Nephilim feature. So there's another one.
It's all very fascinating.
It is. Let's move from the face.
There's so many people that don't even... Go ahead.
So no, I know what you're saying, but yeah, let's the neck, for example, a big ruffle around the neck. We're told it represents aristocracy of Elizabethan age, the big thing around the neck. It's to mock the rich people. But it's also the exact same feature reptiles have in Australia called a frill. It's a reptilian feature, again, manifested onto this caricatured image of a clown. And the most famous version of this is probably in Jurassic Park, with that where it hackles a frill and spits black goo into the guy's face, before killing him.
Sure.
But that's a real creature in Australia. So they're a lot smaller than Jurassic Park ones, but they real feature a lot of lizards in Australia seem to have for some reason. And I think it's another translated thing from the Nephilim. It's likely if they were reptile hybrids, they too may have had these weird frills just resting around the neck. If you look at the Wandjina again in Australia, they have a white frill, which is a continuation of their neck that goes to the shoulders, just like a clown does today. So I think it's just a copy. They've seen the Freemasons who sculpted the caricature of a clown would have seen these cultures and gone, I like that feature. Let's put it on our clown. Let's put it on our ancestral garb. Let's make that feature one of our features. So the clown now has this white frill around the neck, which is, I think, ripped straight from Australia, personally, that specific one. But it's a reptilian feature. The multicolored clothing of a clown, psychedelic polka dots, patterns, as colorful as you can get and patterned as you can get. That's a snake skin. That's a reptilian skin. That's just the way amphibians look, how fish look, how birds look. It's a natural animalistic image. It's a psychedelic reptilian pattern. I mean, even if particular corn snakes in the UK, I've seen in pet shops, if you look at their underbelly, they have a black and white squared checkered pattern going all the way down as well. So I know the black and white checkered pattern can literally be a reptile feature. And a lot of clowns do go heavily on black and white checks. Not only that, it's also a Freemason reference as well. So it's
absolutely
not surprising why that's often synonymous with clown costumes. Clowns, now it gets a bit more metaphorical, a bit more symbolic. Big shoes, big feet of a giant, big hands and gloves, the largeness of a giant. Stilts to accentuate the height like a giant. There's a tiny umbrella or a little hat. Is to make the creature who has them look bigger. Like he has these tiny... Is to accentuate his size. A little dog, for example, with this giant clown, Multiple clowns come out of a tiny car, giants compared to the car. But the car is also symbolic of the human body, especially in dream symbolism. If you dream your car breaks down, usually in real life you may have broken your leg or something, and you feel like you can't move through the world like you once used to. Your car breaking down is symbolically saying you can no longer travel through the world like you once were able to, So that's what, in a dream symbol sense, a car always represents the human body. So to then translate that into a performance in a circus, multiple clowns coming out of a tiny car is reminiscent of multiple demons coming out of a human body. It's they are legion. Many possess an individual. Multiple were cast out of by Jesus and put into the pigs, for example, in that famous story. So I think it's just another tongue-in-cheek reference and joke to demons, Nephilim, cars. So that's basically it. That's why a clown is symbolically a reference to the Nephilim.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that don't even believe that Nephilim exist or all of this. And when you find this stuff out, it's shocking to the point of where it's like, not only do they exist, but you have a whole group of people that are pushing their agenda, that are dressing like them, that are trying to empower them in this world and bring them back as much as they can, because they want to control this world. And that type of mentality is one that we need to get away from. Like, we need to understand that no longer can we say this stuff doesn't exist. because I think it's very compelling, the research that you've put together, the way that you've laid it out on your YouTube and throughout the different podcasts that I've heard. I mean, it's very clear that there are Nephilim and that these clowns are very well connected to that whole thing. And for somebody to say now, after everything that they've heard, that Nephilim don't exist, it's just like, then why? Then why are they doing all of these things that they're doing? Because it seems to be symbology. As we know, they do everything through symbology. It seems to be symbology of something pretty major, if you ask me.
No, I agree. It's quite subtle because we're not supposed to know this is what their symbols used for in the West. It's hidden. It's not
right.
Cult. You know, I've only just uncovered it. So
Yes.
It seems silly when I first say these things because it's ingrained in our culture that clowns are just something silly for the children. But again, consider this, why would the Shriners, for example, a higher level above Freemasonry, who supposedly related to Arabic-themed ideas and concepts as a joke, supposedly in its original concept, why would it have anything to do with clowns? And why do all the shrines have their own clown sect? And why they have the Shriner hospitals where children go to? You know what I mean? It seems so bizarre. And obviously on the surface, it's sold as like, well, you know, the Shriners are charitable and they love children and they just want to make the kids laugh. Bit of fun. But when you understand that, you know, children elicit the most extreme reactions. Either you're going to make them cry or you're going to make them laugh. There's not really much in between children, you know. I have a toddler, you know, and he can be screaming 1 second with pain and annoyance and then suddenly laughing like a maniac the next second, just like that, you know. Their emotions are not regulated like ours. So if you come up to a child who's dying in a hospital, never mind, or already in a state of fear because they're in a hospital, you come at them dressed like an ancient predator that they recognize as something as such on a fundamental level, then you're either going to get extreme fear from this child, which the demons love. They feed off this type of energy, and the person wearing the costume is channeling the demon, therefore will harness the energy right there in front of them because they're creating the energy, you know. Or in some very rare cases, extremely rare cases, the kid will laugh and think it's funny. Still energy. It's still, there's a fine line between laughter and crying, you know. It's the same endorphins release. It's the same part of the brain used for those things. And it's kind of like a loosh farm for demons that the Secret Society created and use the costume of a clown as a tool to feed the demons they venerate and channel through their secret societies and rituals. It's a tool. And musicians use it as well in the mainstream media. You'll find the music secret. People say there's like the songwriter's secret to writing hit songs or something, or it's the big secret is just dress as much like a psychedelic clown monster as you possibly can. And the industry moguls who run the industry will choose you and they'll elevate you. They'll put a spotlight on you and they'll make other people idolize you as a god so they can make other people dress that way too because they're copying the way you look. The secret is just like a clown and you will be made famous. And that is generally the trend I've started to notice.
Oh, that's crazy. I
show my channel as well. The biggest example of this is David Bowie, for example. He had Iggy Stardust, didn't he? And he was literally a white-skinned, red-haired alien from another dimension or space or something. And when he died, he was idolized as a god. He was elevated to godlike status because he is doing something all other cultures around the world still practice today in ancient traditions and tribes in remote places. He is channeling the demon. And this is where this whole selling your soul for rock and roll comes from as well. You hear stories of getting talent from doing these things, you know. That's probably what it's for. But I think it's also a part of the agenda. Like if you're a part of the industries, they're going to want you to dress that way. They're going to push you to start having these styles and aesthetics because they want other people to emulate you. You are the idol. They want more people dressing this way because it opens up more channels. That's the point. So if their idol dresses like that, they will dress like that, you know, and that's kind of the pattern you'll see emerging. Now I pointed it out. Anyway.
Yeah, they don't realize that the person that they're idolizing on stage isn't actually that person. They're actually being indwelled by this Nephilim demon that is getting the energy from the crowd. Because it's not it's not these people. It's not Iggy Stardust that's getting the energy from the crowd. It's the demon inside of him that he is indwelling, or the many, for that matter, the legion of them that are getting all of this energy from everything that he's doing on stage. And I think that's a huge point that people miss, is they are pulling energy, all of our energy, all the time. We learned this, in what's that one movie, Monsters Inc., where they were scaring the children and harnessing all of their energy in those capsules. And then they would take it and they would use that. All that energy was these scary monsters coming through this doorway, this portal, to scare them and then collect their energy. And like you said, they found out later that you could just make them laugh and you get good energy too, but and faster. Yeah, more energy. But that's not the kind of energy that they want. They want the negative energy. So that's what they do. And so when you go to these concerts and everything like that, all of that energy based on the songs that you're singing, the lyrics that these worship lyrics, these things that we don't even realize that we're singing, we're pushing all of this energy towards these demonic symbols, these demonic entities, which is crazy to think about, but that's what's happening.
Yeah, you cut out there for the last 5 seconds, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, Monsters Inc. is really on point. Actually, it's telling you the agenda right there, and and they became jokesters in the later series, the after series, which I've watched. Disney, and they make their business from telling jokes. And there's something about pranks and jokes which is quite sinister on a lower level. It's laughing at other people's misfortunes and at their expense. There's something. The Joker's jokes are cruel. You know what I mean? And there's something about human nature of laughing at darkness and jokes. So I think laughter itself is a response, a nervous reaction response, when we don't know how to respond to awkward situations as well. So laughter is not just always good. It's not always about being happy. It's not always. It's something else.
Right.
I think there can be joyous laughter. Don't get me wrong. That's probably the only form of laughter from God, which is real, But most of the forms of laughter, someone pointed this out to me, is actually more like, there's more sinister undertones to it usually. It's a reaction to...
Or it's masking something else, insecurity or anxiety or whatever.
Exactly. And energy is energy to these creatures and these monsters. Loosh is kind of like a very new age term. I can't remember the author who came up with it. But there seems to be precedent and repeated evidence to say that demons feed off of energy somehow, human energy that we're gaining from people, so I'm not willing to just discount that, even though I can't find any biblical reference to it. There seems to be plenty of testimony to say that people who encounter these entities have some kind of drain going on in some way, like they make them scared, and then they just drain them of everything, and then they collapse and have no energy. So it seems like that a lot of that is going on. And the clown, like I said, is the perfect tool to elicit such a reaction out of people, because they know it's instinctually a fear-producing image. The studies have been done, and obviously I'm compiling these for my book, but kids don't like clowns. They do not like them. Like the ones that do say, well, I loved clowns when I was a kid. It's like, yeah, you're like one in literally 100,000. You are the outlier.
Yeah, those are the kids to watch out for.
you are not the norm. The norm is kids are petrified of clowns. And it's just, you see all these old pictures from like the 1800s, the early 1900s. Of clowns, and honestly, those clowns were awful. They were something else. They were like nightmare fuel. Like, and you see, like, holding a child, and the child is screaming, and the face is contorted with fear, and they're like pushing away from this clown who's like holding it and laughing at it, and smiling, and this kid is just like, get this monster away from me! I'm gonna die! You can see the tangible fear in the children's eyes, and the parents are in the background laughing. Oh, how cute. And it's kind of like, what was wrong with these people? Like, what kind of psychology?
Yeah, no kidding.
What kind of trauma had this generation gone through where they thought that was okay for children? What
that was
happened?
Funny.
It always makes me laugh. Always
Well,
makes me
there's a
laugh.
lot of people that do that where they take their kids to see, Santa, or they take their kids to see the Easter Bunny or whatever. And they're like, go sit on their lap. And the kid's terrified, but the parents are trying to get them to still sit on their lap because we got this social norm that says this is what you have to do. And the kid's just like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with this psycho, but we just kind of push them and we just want our pictures. It's like, no, we're terrorizing these children. We need to just calm down. We don't have to have pictures with the Easter Bunny if your kid's going to be freaking out and having a mental breakdown.
Yeah, me and my wife, my son's only 2, and we've already said to him, yeah, Santa's not real. Don't believe that. Don't go sit on man.
Yeah, we don't do the Santa thing either anymore.
It's funny, we were in a shop the other day.
Break it to him young.
Yeah, he was in the shop the other day and he was walking around just saying, Santa's not real on repeat. And I don't know why he was saying that then of all places, but he got some funny looks from some of the other parents, around the place.
Boy.
I love that.
It was funny to me.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go.
So we broke down the whole clown thing, but is there any research that you've done where mimes fit into this? Because they're clownish, but they don't have a voice, and they're super creepy to me. Maybe that's why I'm wondering.
Yeah,
if there's any mime, anything in your research.
The Roman period, the Roman times of street performers and theatres. But mimes were more often mimics than what we have today with the silent performance. They would mimic people. Like Jim Carrey, for example, can just mimic somebody perfectly and contort his face to be like that's what kind of the old mimes used to be. And they can kind of channel other characters. It developed a lot through the modern circuses through the 19 and 1800s to become like performance acts, something unique and new. And it was like a development on the French style of Poirot the clown, the sad sack clown. The sad mime became this silent character who would, through his bodily and facial features, he would then be able to enact the emotion and the expression of what he was thinking and feeling. And it did evolve into this mime stuck in a glass box situation, you know what I mean? And there's something to be said for a fractaled black and white patterned white-faced clown monster trapped in a dimension where he can't communicate with us. There's something highly symbolic about that entire
That's true.
So it wouldn't surprise me. You'll never find evidence for this in the historical documents, but based on my body of evidence and work, it's likely it was a performance created by brothers of the fraternity to, again, mimic the truth of what the situation is. They are communicating with entities who are behind the veil, who are trapped in a dimension they don't want to be in, and their mime pretends to be trapped in a glass box and can't. So there's definitely something there. Definitely.
Yeah.
Very interesting connection, and I think there is definitely something there.
I think it might have
it's interesting to think that this. Sorry, are we good?
You're good. You're back. There you go. Yeah.
Okay. It's interesting when you start thinking about like court jesters, because as Americans we don't really have kings and queens. We don't have all that stuff. So the idea of court jesters is kind of lost on us unless we have watched movies or done our research or whatever. But those things are kind of lost on us. We don't understand, kings and queens or court jesters and stuff like that. But there was this jester that was always in the courts making fun of people and dancing and making a mockery of all of the pomp and circumstance, if you will. It almost is interesting to think that, this character also exists in God's kingdom, that there is this mocker, this accuser of the brethren, almost, if you will, this one that is going around spreading lies and making fun of people all the time. It's a very interesting thing.
Oh yeah, the devil is a clown by any standard stretch of the imagination. Not only the fact that he's the ultimate fool as well, because he can't win. he's taken up a battle with his death to lose as well. So there's all sorts of symbols. The court jester himself is an interesting one because it was kind of a result of the collapse of Rome. A lot of these performers and these jester type characters, that come out of the Venice carnivals and things like this, these street performers needed work, but they weren't allowed to perform anymore because it was considered of the devil to pretend to be someone you weren't, and it was frowned upon to be an actor. It was considered a very bad thing to be, a very low class and caste to be an actor. But even though everyone else was banned, the kings and rulers and the aristocracies, they considered it like a commodity to have a jester. have their own personal fool that they could pay for because they were rich and above the law type of attitude. And it became like a competition of like who could have the funniest court jester between all the monarchies and all throughout Europe, you know. So it became popular and fashionable to have a court jester coming out of the medieval period. And then by the end of the medieval periods, it was pretty much the norm. And it became a very weird industry, actually. And so that's how jesters ended up becoming a thing. There's a lot to be said, you know, for the idea of something like a demonic style cheeky rascal character being able to mock the king. There's something about that, isn't there? It's kind of what gives them authority to do such a thing. And in many ways people describe jesters as being an advisor in a way. They would advise the king on the best course of action. There's plenty of stories where like the king hated the advice and cast the jester away, and then there's funny stories of how the jester managed to get back into the courts. One jester faked his own death, and then the king went to the funeral and was basically like, "You were the greatest thing I've ever had. Like, I'm so sorry, I cast you out of the country. If you were still alive today, I'd let you come back in." And then the jester sprung up and said, "Thanks for the pardon," and then came back. You know, because he said he would pardon.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of, so they are
good.
funny, you know.
That's
but there's something about the gall to do that to a king. You know, you have to be channeling something to have the confidence to do those things, and and behind the scenes being that jester trope is really common. But that jesters are kind of a whole sideline to my theory, to be honest, because that's kind of where they end. They kind of dissipated and stopped being a thing the later into the 1780s it got. It was all about the commedia dell'arte movements and the theatres coming out of Italy that spread through Europe that kind of stayed alive through the medieval period by just traveling and putting on quick improvised shows with makeshift stages, you know. And that's where you get Harlequin is kind of a mashup between Mediterranean gods like Dionysus and Mercury, who's fleet of foot, fast-witted with a staff, the Caduceus of Mercury or the Thyrsus of Dionysus. And that Mediterranean mythology was mixed also with northern Teutonic mythological wild men beasts, hairy tall beasts with clubs. Kind of mash them together and you get what's known as Arlecchino, as it's pronounced in Italian. Someone's corrected me on this. I've been saying Arlecchino, but in Italian it's pronounced Arlecchino, and that's where you get Harlequin. And so this, and it was also named after a specific French version of the wild man, which a monk claimed in the 10th century to have witnessed in these writings. But it was called Helikins, and he basically had this gang of demons that would follow him from village to village, causing mayhem, and he had his big club on his back. So, you know, Harlequin has his slapstick, which is his club, and he was originally dressed in like loose rags with tufts of hair sticking out everywhere, multicolored patches just randomly sewn on, and he wore a black mask covered in hair with a lump on the forehead. So he was a beast. He was a wild man creature. He was a Nephilim, basically. It was a memory from the ancient past of tall, giant, hairy beast men, okay, with multicolored patches, funnily enough. Also Mediterranean gods kind of mixed together. So then Harlequin became the devil character in these shows of the day. And clown was always around, but he was called Pedrolino. And he wasn't a clown as we know it then. He was just a servant of a rich man. And he was basically the butt of the joke. They would beat him and do silly things to him, and the crowd would laugh at his pathetic nature. That developed into Poirot the Clown in French theatre by about the 1800s. And Poirot was kind of, he was the first clown not to wear a mask. He just did white face makeup, and his expressions gave a new life to the character, because it used to be just wore a mask, and it was a stock mask, you know what I mean, and it never changed. But this new French Poirot had emotion, and he was a sad sack. He was always pining after Columbine, the daughter of the rich man, and he was the servant of the rich man. But Columbine wanted Harlequin, didn't want him, so he was sad about it, you know. And the French really clicked with that idea, and they loved him for some reason. They thought he was an amazing character and actor, but very boring, very low energy, not really like a clown, like a circus clown we have today. But then the British clown took it a different route and became the wild, bombastic, drunk, silly, fool, cheeky rascal stealing things, you know, and drinking all the time. And he still dressed like a boring servant, a poor servant in rags, nothing colourful. plain white. But then one day, the son of a Freemason called Charles Dibdin took over the theatre where this show was happening, and he dressed the clown in this brand new psychedelic outfit, which looks just like the demons of India, funnily enough. Probably highly likely inspired by Indian Hindu mythology, because his father, the Freemason I mentioned, his brother, first of all, was a soldier who was with the East India Company, colonizing India at the time. He even died there. And his father also traveled back and forth to India plenty of times and even was going to live there. So he was well acquainted with Hindu mythology and demonology. And he was a member of the craft. He was a Freemason, a member of the Leicestershire Lodge. So it's highly likely he was well aware of the demons of India too. And it seems like his son...
Highly likely.
Dressed the clown like a demonic Hindu demon. And from then on, that image has developed into the modern clown we have today. And they rolled with it. All the Freemason run circuses after that in America adopted the clown into their performances with that new white-faced, psychedelic, demonic-looking visage. You find all the old posters of these clown shows, these circus shows in America. The clown's always drawn as a giant above the tent, looking down on all the tiny people. It's really on the nose, you know what I mean? It's like they're telling you, this represents the giants of old, you know. And those old first clowns, they are terrifying. They are the most terrifying renditions. And it's kind of got sillier as it's gone into the modern 21st century. But the initial ones are through and through demons, full-on demons, you know. And like I said, in the 1800s, when this costume change happened, clown replaced Harlequin as the lead role. Harlequin wasn't the demon he used to be. He was boring by this point. He didn't have that energy he used to have, where he was like a demonic, poking fun at everybody type jester character. The clown became that. The British clown, specifically with this new costume, became the demon character and replaced Harlequin. And also, not only did he start acting like a demon, he dressed like one. And from then on, we have what we have today. And it's just evolved. It's just only evolved from there. So the history of a clown, through and through, even its roots, are based in a representation of the wild man of Europe, which is a Nephilim, a Bigfoot, if you want to call it anything. So,
yeah. It's all fascinating, man. And your research is so compelling. And for people to dismiss it or to not want to take the time to look into it or research it, it's upsetting, because there are so many things out there that we should understand. And this is one of them. This is something that we should have a full knowledge of. In my opinion, being a Christian and wanting to actually know the truth and digging into what is really truth, we have to ask these questions. Where did they come from? Why are they depicting? Why did they make them look like this? Why? And I think the reality is that they are demonic, and
just cut out
people don't want to admit that. I'm sorry, am I back now?
There we go. You're back. Yeah, there we are. Yeah.
Okay. I was just saying that, you have these demonic entities that we're just dismissing as funny people. We're just blah, blah, blah. It's no big deal. But as Christians, I believe we really need to stand up for this and say, no, we need to do our research. We need to figure out who these people are, why they're doing what they're doing, because they are trying to take over the world. They are trying to kill all of our children. They are trying to steal our energy. And but Walgreens is out there handing out these little noses for everybody to wear when you get your shots. All you got to do is get a shot and you get a little red nose. And it's like, it's so in the face. How do we not see this? How do we not research this? How do we not pay attention?
I didn't know about the Walgreens thing. That's terrifying. I mean, there's already Red Nose Day.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a specifically Western thing, by the way, and we have it in the UK. I didn't realize my naivety. I didn't know it was also in Australia. Sorry, in anywhere where we speak English, basically in Canada, in America. Yeah. I didn't know you had it. But that's basically on such a vast scale. They've got all the Western world ignorantly dressing like clowns, like a ritual every single year. And it's not a joke. Like, this is dressing like a thing channels the thing. That's well understood south of the equator, it seems.
Right.
Generally speaking, it's just us who have this other. Either we're ignorant to it, and we just don't understand that dressing like something has any importance whatsoever, Or we seem to those ancient cultures in Europe who do still do this. They think they're dressing like something to scare it away or to trick it in some way. Nonsense. You cannot scare away a demon by dressing like one. I'm sorry. A demon knows the difference between one of its own and some human dressed in some funny little clothing and rags. Okay, they know the difference. Give them some credit. They've been on the other side of the veil for thousands of years. Learns a thing or two, you know.
Yes.
But this is ignorant to it in the West. Every year for Halloween, we dress like things, and the clown is always a common thing to dress as. Not the most common thing, but it's one of the major things. There's always a new clown film that comes out every year to inspire the next Halloween goers to copy that idol clown from that recent thing, whether it's It, the Joker, the Terrifier. What's that recent one? The Twisted Metal film has just been remade. You've got that clown mask wearing maniac. You know, there's always something coming out to make sure people are dressing like clowns during Halloween. You know, they push it.
One thing thing that I thought of was the Insane Clown Posse, that band. They had this Insane Clown Posse, and they had a really big following. I don't know if they still do, but they had the Gigolos and the Juggalos or something like that. Anyway, they would wear certain clothes. They would all hang out. They would paint their face. They were the Insane Clown Posse. And this posse wasn't just the band. It was like this group of followers that were following this band. And that came to my mind when we started doing research on clowns and start thinking about your theory, because I am fully seeing it now. Like, once you step back, you fully see this integration of clowns and it not really being very nice most of the time.
No, but the Insane Clown Posse, I actually got a few emails from members recently who were like questioning their entire life now work. And they're saying, you know, what I say, they're saying to me, like, what I'm saying actually, you know, makes a lot of sense considering the things they've experienced. And it's like, apparently Violent J, one of the members of, and you know, the Insane Clown Posse, have this, they've invented this whole mythology about the Dark Carnival or something. I can't remember what it's called. I'm probably butchering it. I don't know enough about them to fully be an authority on this.
Yeah, I don't either.
But they have this whole mythology that involves demons in this dark carnival setting. And, you know, I believe he, in his own biography, has admitted that he got the idea to dress like clowns straight from demons who communicated with him. You know what I mean? I think it's all there. And these people, like I said, are idolized and copied. And what they've created is like a sense of religious community, you know, under this visage of the following the band's career. But what they've also inserted is you have to dress like a clown to be a member. And it's no joke to do that. It's actually far more sinister than it seems on the surface. They think it's just a bit of fun. They think it's cheap and silly, you know, but it's not. Like, it really isn't. Like, it's actually incredibly dangerous. And I feel silly saying it. I know what it sounds like. I really do. You know, I know what this sounds like. But it's serious. Look at my work and you'll see this is not a joke. It's been practiced thousands of years everywhere else. Just because we're ignorant of the rule and the law doesn't mean we're immune and not subject to the law and the rule. You dress like something to channel something, whether you know it or not. Heath Ledger, for example, dressed like the Joker, ended up dying. You know, that's the result of it. He went insane. And he died, you know, and that's what happens when you channel things, even in ignorance. It will ruin your life. And that tends to be, and I'm not trying to cast aspersions at the Juggalos. I don't know you personally well enough to make those type of judgments. Sure. I can only tell you from my research the dangers of dressing like a clown. It's no laughing matter.
Right.
Make a joke there, like, but
and that's all we try to do on our podcast is to just bring people to the knowledge. You know, you just kicked over probably 700 rabbit holes for people to go down. You know, there's just like a whole nest of rabbit holes now for everybody to go down, and that's what we want. We want people to do their own research, to look. Don't take our word for it. I mean, we're pretty confident that what we're saying and what Paul's bringing to us is truth, just based on the amount of time and energy and effort that he has put into it and that we personally have put into it to corroborate the things that he's saying. So to be dismissive and to just be like, nah, that's not reality is ignorance at its at its basic level because you haven't actually looked into it and you're dismissing it based on something that is a feeling that you have inside. But what we're saying is, please push that feeling aside and follow these trails, and you'll find the same thing that Paul's finding and that we're finding, is that there are demons, guys. There's demons out there, and they're a lot more involved in this world that you see around you than you think. And so follow these rabbit trails. Follow Paul on his Understanding Conspiracy on YouTube. Check him out, because all of these videos that he's made that he talked about in the beginning are laying out all of these truths. They're very shareable. It's a very easy place for you to pass on this information. You can pass on this podcast as well to just get people talking about this subject. Paul, do we still have you over there?
Yeah. No, I'm happy to come back whenever, guys. Like I said, I'm working on the book, so that should be hopefully published by the back end of next year. I'm halfway through writing it, but then the whole process and the editing process is a process in its own right. So I'm hoping the book will be finished by a quarter way through next year, but the process of getting it out to people might take the end of the year, maybe into 2020.
It takes longer than you think.
Yeah, but when that comes out, we'll do the whole process again. Yeah, we'll start again. But
I love it.
What I will say as a closing thing is, I've made all my connections and I've laid out the basics of the theory, and I go deep into a lot of things, especially the cultures on my channel. But since doing the podcast circuit, I've had plenty of creative people, even the podcasts themselves, make their own posts where they found their own stuff that I haven't seen. And these connections, once you know the basics of the theory, you will start to see it out there in the world yourself, in your own context, in your own media that you're into, subcultures you're into that even I won't know about. You'll start to see the prevalence and the insertion of psychedelic patterns, colors, pale white skin, red lipstick, wild red hair. You see that anywhere in any iteration or form. Something dodgy is happening. Okay, they're trying to do something there. Evoke a particular spirit. And honestly, there's some mainly the pop culture stuff. I don't listen to mainstream music. I don't watch films. I don't have time, so I value when people tell me about all these things, when people show me there's a clown in this, there's a clown in that, this matches your theory perfectly. They basically just said that in this film. Show me, share it with each other. And, I know what the theory is like at face value. The Nephilim look like clowns. Sure. What are you talking about? You're an idiot. I get it. That's the initial reaction. This is not a joke. I'm not making this stuff up, and it's actually a lot more serious than it seems on the surface. It's a lot more grounded as well than the theory sounds at the initial, at the initial sound of things. But yeah, I think I've said everything I can say today, guys. I don't know if you have any questions you want to ask me before we wrap this up, but yeah.
No, I think we'll wrap it for now. We definitely want to promote your book when it comes out. So let us know. Be in touch with that. We'll definitely put it out to our audience. We want people to get this book in their hand because it's not only is it a great read, I'm sure, but it's also a great tool to teach others about what's going on in the world around them. So with that, Paul Stobbs, we're so thankful that you had the time to come on and talk to us about this wild and crazy theory that we're with you on, by the way. Understanding Conspiracy is the YouTube channel, and we want you guys to don't forget to go and like and share everything he's got going on over there, because this is going to change some people's lives. I really believe it. It's going to change the way that people see the world, and that's what we're all about here on That So Fringy podcast. So with it, we are going to take off for now, but we will be back soon with more crazy episodes. So take care, all of you out there. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.